Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. This is Chris Richardson, President and General Counsel for BDB Solutions, and we have John Baselice, our Executive Vice President and Head of Government Relations. And we wanted to talk a little bit today about the Department of Labor. John, why don't you start off by telling the folks what we've been doing with our government relations team to get the Department of Labor moving on our cases?
Certainly, Chris. And once again, thank you for joining us today. Last month in May, we were able to meet with Secretary Chavez DeRemer's team, and it was a very good meeting in the sense that the folks that run the agency understood that they have problems with their processing efficiency. And we were very open with them and saying, listen, we're here to work with you however you think it makes sense to, whether you want to partner with DHS or if there's certain things you want to do, there's new rulemakings you want to move forward on. BDB Solutions is game to do whatever it is that helps get your processing more efficient, processing efficiency up. Because if you do, then everybody benefits from that. In addition to that, I've had several members of our board come in to meet with folks on Capitol Hill. We've had several folks in both parties reach out to the Labor Department saying, hey, can you please do something about your processing efficiency because it's costing the American economy. It's basically a drag on it because there are many companies who could grow and prosper a lot more if they had the access to workers that they needed, and they can't find Americans to fill these particular types of jobs. All this is holding us back. And we're finally starting to see some green shoots out of all these efforts. I want to say it was the end of June, last full week of June, where the Labor Department announced through an executive memo from the Secretary saying, listen, we're going to establish this Office of Immigration Policy in the Office of the Secretary. And we heard it today at the President's Cabinet hearing, where Secretary Chavez DeRemer and Secretary Rollins, who is the USDA Secretary, it's the United States Department of Agriculture, for those that aren't in ag world, they both talked about how this is important to get these individuals and their processing their petitions through the system more quickly. Mm-hmm. All of this is good news for us.
No, that's all great news. You know, John, I think it's important that people understand that BDB played a large role. You played a large role in making all of this happen by your repeated visits to the Capitol, by talking to the Secretary, talking to her office. You really brought this to the fore. And so I think that the BDB team and government relations should be commended for that. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, yep, you sped up the DOL process, but what about the USCIS side, visa retrogression? What are we doing on that front? And I think it's important that people remember that a lot of this stuff requires, it's not like something we can do overnight, right? There's no magic wand to dealing with either DOL or the USCIS process. But what activities are we doing to make the USCIS process better?
Chris, I'm glad you asked this question because last month, at the end of June, we met with senior officials at DHS and in USCIS to highlight similar problems that they are having in terms of getting our petitions out more quickly. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that our friends at USCIS said, listen, we understand you're having problems, but the bulk of your problems, they start at DOL. Like, we can't do anything unless and until DOL completes its process of issuing a prevailing wage determination, going through a labor certification, approving it, and then that's just the way the process is set up legally today, both through the statutes and the regulations that govern the process. This is how it runs. And we put it forth and like, what if that didn't have to be the case? And they said, please tell us more, to which yours truly here and other folks on our team that were at the meeting with them said, well, is it truly necessary that USCIS has to wait? Like, it'd be one thing for them to check the box off and say, all right, we can wait for DOL to do this and then we can finalize everything. But why can't USCIS do the review itself of the documents, do the review of all the stuff that one company would submit to USCIS and say, listen, we want to have this person in the country. We can't find someone who's able, willing, qualified, and available to do it. Would you approve this? Whether it's a conditional approval, have them do their paperwork on the front end instead of waiting for the Labor Department to do its job. Because if you did that, you're talking about a process, then Chris, you can testify to this. In some cases, it takes us over 3 years on an EB3 petition. It takes us 3 years to get a petition through. And when you're dealing with businesses that needed that worker, 10 weeks ago from when they're applying, you're asking them to wait almost 1,000 days to get that individual into the country at the job site. And we're saying to ourselves, like, well, this could help cut, as backlogged as the agencies are, this can help take that process, and at least it'd be a quick thing to cut it in half. One quick, easy thing to cut in half. And another thing that our friends at USCIS were very interested in participating in was in an interagency roundtable with several businesses, which we had suggested. And to me, it wouldn't be complete if we didn't also have. We clearly have been meeting with DOL. DOL is interested in doing this. The State Department, to me, is the third leg in this three-legged stool that needs to be, because whether it's our EB3s, it's our J1s, it's the H2s, it's the various other categories that BDV works with through our Argo visa company, it's critically important to have consular operations also being efficient.
Right.
And all of that, like, it's just those three agencies, we got to get folks through them as quickly as we can.
Absolutely, John.
That to me is absolutely critical to getting this, to having something that's going to be productive and lead to meaningful policy changes.
Right. What do you think when you think about like H2B and the development of H2B, when you think about how the government seems to be like, hey, because we're cutting back on the undocumented population, we need to increase the H2B portion of the population. Do you think that renewed effort and love for H2B is going to trickle down to EB3, unskilled?
I think it's possible. I say that with a little bit of hesitancy, just because, and not just H2B, but the H2 programs, both A and B, they have a significant amount of political support that at this moment in time, you don't see similar levels of support for EB3. And that's not to say that it can't be creative. It can't be highlighted to like, hey, this is very important as well. To me, H2A, H2B, like, you look at what goes, particularly the Labor Department. Let's focus on the Labor Department just for a minute here. Yeah. Every time there is an onslaught of H2As or H2Bs coming in to the Labor Department, the folks at the Office of Foreign Labor Certification, they have limited resources. So the folks that run that office are saying, well, we have thousands of applications coming in. We have to move several people off of the EB line and the H1B line to work on these cases, because whether it's H2A or H2B, you're dealing with stakeholders who have a very time-sensitive need for these workers. And that's a significant contributing factor to the delays we have on EB3.
Right.
So you look at it in that sense. I am hopeful that the way that, given what I've heard from the folks at OFLC and just reading the actual memo that is establishing the Office of Immigration Policy, the language was intentionally broad to be able to cover not just H2s, which is what was reported in some early media reports on this development, but it's done in a way where it can include EB3. It could also include EB1 and 2 to the extent that some of those folks also need to get a labor cert. That to me, the more the merrier in this case, because if there's policies that help, that try to extend, whether it's more preferential treatment, whether it's a premium processing option, whether it's something that is still under consideration, moving certain H-2B type of jobs into H-2A. That's another thing that is making the rounds, Chris. And I think that's critically important, because if you look at some of the things that happen with B, all the work has to get done very quickly because there's a cap in place with B. If it's A, it's different, where if they were to move, seafood or aquaculture, or they were to move certain forestry operations, which deal with tree growing and tree felling. It's funny how one is A, but be that as it may, those are the types of things where if you're moving folks around into certain categories where now there's no longer that type of exigency to make a decision, and there's extra work to do to make sure that everybody has a fair chance at being selected under the quota, that's something where important. It's definitely an important development.
Right. No, that's right, Sean.
And in the weeks and months to come, I think we're going to start to see the contours of what this Office of Immigration Policy at the Labor Department is going to be doing. The other thing that I've heard, there were other reports about the OFLC administrator, Brian Pasternak, that he was going to be taking this job. It's my understanding he is helping to stand this program up. He is not going to be moving from his current role to the director of this new OIP. And the folks at the Labor Department are actively searching for someone to fill that role.
That's great. And that's a friend of yours too, right?
Yep. Brian, I've known Brian for a very long time. So, and
no, that's great.
The interesting thing is going to be how the administration goes about trying to fill this role. And it's...
Yeah. No, that's great, John. And I think that that's just something people have to realize, that we're doing everything we can on our end to make this visa process smoother and better. It has its ups and downs, but we're going to continue pushing for it on our end. But thanks a lot, John. This is really helpful. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. And we'll give you guys more updates as they come in. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.